Assuming that you have successfully downloaded BAM from the Windows App Store, I'm going to give you a full beginner's tutorial to how to get started with drawing. So obviously the first thing we do is to open the BAM application, and your views will hopefully be set up like this. If they're not, bearing in mind that the views are highly customizable, you might want to get the views like this before you start this tutorial. And the best way to work out how to do that is to go into tutorials up here and go into setting up views tutorial. When you've got your views set up like this, which is probably the best way to start out, then you'll be ready to carry on with this tutorial. First thing I'm going to do is in the center here we have a canvas. I'm going to adjust its size to fit the screen we're working with better. So I'm going to click on it, and on our right we have a bunch of properties. So the kind of workflow is left to right. Here we have the Sarah palette, which allows us to add stuff. Here we have the canvas where we're editing, and here we have the properties where we can change things properties. I want to make this canvas so it fits more on the screen. So I'm going to go on to positioning, and I'm going to change the width to 800. To make it taller, I'm actually going to click here and press enter. So we're adding text, and it's automatically fitting to the size of our text. The text we were adding was just entering, so you can't actually see it. It's new lines, but we could type something here. I'd recommend with this tutorial that every time I show you something, you then pause the tutorial and try it out for yourself, and then carry on with the tutorial. The first thing I'm going to do is add what's called a squiggle. So these are all different ways to start adding a squiggle. I'm going to choose a curvy squiggle. So I'm clicking that, and now the canvas is ready to start adding the squiggle. Now I'm going to click the mouse down, move it around, release the mouse, and now I'm just moving the mouse around. And when I'm happy with where this dot is, I can click and it will pin that dot there. So I'm just clicking away, creating this squiggle. And now to stop adding this squiggle, I press enter. Or I could click up here. Now that it's been added, we can actually go ahead and change its shape to anything we want. If I click on it, you'll see these little pink dots which represent where the points are. And we can take any of them and move them around, and the squiggle will connect up between the dots. We can also add a squiggle that consists of straight segments between points. So I'm going to click this. Please move up here. These, by the way, decide whether it's going to add your new segments to the old squiggle or start a new squiggle. These separate ones imply it's going to start a new squiggle. If you're confused between these, just leave it on this right-hand side one. It's probably best. So this time the squiggle consists of straight segments connecting the points. And you don't have to connect it up, but I'm going to finish it off like this. And again, you can adjust the points as you wish. We can also merge points. So I'm going to take this point and put it over here. If I move this point, all the segments attached to it will move as well. I'm going to press Ctrl Z for undo, because I don't want those merged right now. If we wanted these two segments, this segment and this segment, to share a gradient around this point, we can click on this point and press W on the keypad to wed. So clicking on this point, pressing W, and they now share a gradient, these two segments. I'm going to press Ctrl Z to undo that. The other thing we could do is just have one of these segments share a gradient from the other. So if I click down here, we now have this pink line. If I hover over this segment, you can see that this base segment shares a gradient with this segment, but not the other way around. And wherever I move them, they will stick with that. A shortcut to stop them sharing gradients is to press A on the keypad. Or we could take the one that shares a gradient, hover over, move off to say we no longer want to share a gradient. Clicking on that point, pressing W on my keypad, they're sharing a gradient. And I could go around and do that for all of them, or I could select multiple of them at once by pressing W. And equally on this curvy one that started off curvy, we can press A on the keypad, and that will stop the segments sharing a gradient. And I could select multiple of them. So now we've switched around our curvy segment and our straight line segment. I'm going to delete both of these, and I hope you're practicing this as we go along. And I'm going to draw a square. Pressing enter to stop. Now, it's not a perfect square, and if we wanted to make it a perfect square, we could always sneak this grid onto 10, so it's a bit more clippy. There, that looks more perfect. We could take one of these segments and we could halve it. So I'm going to press H on the keypad, and now we've halved this segment. So I can turn it into a kind of a house thing if I wanted to. And I could go ahead and halve that. I don't know what that is, but it's something. We can also halve these things by choosing segment and clicking, I'm going to choose this segment here, clicking segment half. And you can see the symbol here, it goes from a straight line to a line that's being chopped in half. Move that so it kind of looks like our symbol. I'm going to delete this. Now this pen color we were using, black, thickness 4, quite like that, so I'm going to add that to our available collection. And this one I'm going to change the color. So I click here to change the color of our current pen. And here we have the color wave window. I'm going to select a different color. That purpley color, as good as any. But when I move my mouse off of this, the color wave window will disappear and we'll be back to editing the canvas. So I move my mouse off and it disappears. I'm going to add a straight squiggle. Now I'm going to press space to allow me to carry on adding a squiggle, but it's going to start in a separate place. That's different from pressing enter. If you press enter or escape, it stops adding squiggle. If you press space, you get to carry on. So I'm pressing space, selecting from here, and I'm joining up these guys. Pressing space, selecting here, joining up these guys. When you get it more into this, I'd recommend looking at the tutorials on these two buttons. And by the way, it's well worth mentioning, if there's any buttons you don't understand, what you can do is you can click down and swipe right, and that's called Swelp, and a help tutorial will come up. At the moment, it's me explaining exactly what that button does. So anything you don't understand, you can Swelp on it, and it will be explained to you. So you won't have to be scrabbling around with Google, typing in what does the funny button with the squiggly lines do. You can just click down, swipe right, and then the browser comes up and gives you what you need to see. These two buttons. I'll switch that off because I already know how to use those. Okay, so I've made this shape and can move the points around and the segments will move around. But notice many of these segments are attached to this one single point in the middle. If we move this point around, all the segments will adapt as well. And we could choose the outside ones and make them share gradients with each other. Clicking down, just moving that to get them to share gradients with each other. And I'm going to keep that one straight just for funsies, so it's like a flat tire. I'm going to make this whole thing smaller. And now I'm going to add another kind of object called a panel. Clicking here allows me to add a panel, and now you choose where you want it to go. I'm going to select here. This just allows us to have a collection of text and squiggles and more panels and side panels. I'm going to put this in here. Now I want to talk about duplicating. If I take this and just want to duplicate this squiggle, there's two ways of doing it. I can hold Control down when I'm moving it, so there, it's naturally duplicated. Or I could press Control C.
Object copied to clipboard.
And you probably just heard there my computer telling me that the object was copied to clipboard. And then click where I want to go and press Control V. And we now have another pasted version. We could duplicate the panel with its contents. And we could put the other panel inside this new panel. And then we could duplicate all of that. Let's get rid of that one. Right, I'm going to take this one and keep it. Everything else I'm going to delete. And I'm going to move my face over here for the time being. And this I'm going to get back to original size by going into positioning, width 100%, height 100%. Oops. If I wanted one of these individual segments to be a different color, I can go into segment and change outline. Now the appearance of this, the whole thing is an appearance. All the outline is this color. And we could change all of the outline. And I just change it to some kind of green. And I'm going to press Ctrl Z because that is burning my eyes. If we want to change a segment, we click on the segment and we go to the segment section of the properties, the auto expander, and we could change the specific outline of this. I'm going to change it to a blue. A green, making the same mistake as last time. So now that specific segment is green. Control Z undoes that. Because quite often when you click on a segment, you want to edit that segment, we can choose the auto expander option. And it's the same with points as well. So that means if we click on a segment, the segment stuff will come up. And if we click on a point, the point stuff will come up. To demonstrate color, I'm going to draw a pyramid on top of a cube, because we all know that pyramids on top of cubes are the best way of demonstrating color. I'm not sure where to put my face. I think we'll go up there. So let's add this pen to our collection and let's start a new one for our pyramid. I'm thinking dark blue. Yep, that's nice enough. And I'm actually going to make this slightly thinner. I'll make this to 3. Now let's start our cube. I could have really done with the grid on for this. I'm going to press enter, abort that, move my face again, and change the grid to 10. So we can have a nice, there I go. So we can have a nice, accurate pyramid. Pressing space. Actually, I want to keep editing the same one over and over again, so I'm going to click on this. By the way, if these are confusing, just swap left on them and they'll be explained in more detail. Okay. Pressing space, joining these two guys up. And now we no longer need the grid on 10. So here we have our pyramid on top of a cube, and let's say we want these faces to have some color. This is where the splash comes into play. If I click on this one, we get to add a splash of color, and our current default color of splash is this color. So I'm just going to add one of those. Now I could pop it in the middle, which is fine. I can move around the splash, and if I didn't want it there, I can actually move it here. So it fills out from wherever it starts. And we can also duplicate it just like any other object. So I'm duplicating it. However, I'm just actually going to pop this all in a panel to be on the safe side. No, am I? Yes. You'll see why I'm doing that in a second. Now notice this now is now filled here, so that's all very confusing, and we'll find out a way of not letting that happen in a minute. So because the splash fill from wherever they are, if for example that splash was no longer to be confined within this rectangle, then the color will fill a new area. So you can see we're no longer encompassing it. Color fills a new area. Press Ctrl Z to undo that. If we didn't want that to happen, we can take the splash of color and we can actually attach it onto one of these segments. And now, wherever that segment moves, that splash of color will fill out from within it. I'm going to add another splash. Now this time I'm going to use this button, sorry, and it will bring up the color wave dialog. And this little black rectangle on the top left is supposed to represent the dialog window. So I'm pressing this and we get to choose our splash color before we add it. So I'm going to go for a shade of gray. And by the way, down here you can micro adjust. Once you've chosen your general color, you can kind of micro adjust. Anyway, going back to that shade of gray, maybe slightly darker. Click in here. And I'm going to I'm going to duplicate this. And I'm going to move into here, if I can grab it properly. Now this side I'm going to imagine is shaded, so it's going to be a slightly darker grey. Once again I'm going to choose this, going up my grayscale. That will hopefully do it. Adding there. And I'm going to duplicate this one and add it here. Now when I move this around, you can see we have our shaded side and our light side. And if I wanted to change that around, I might take that there, move that to here, move that to here, move these ones. So now we have our shaded side on the right. So these splash fill objects are very easy to manipulate. If we wanted to change the shape of this, let's say we want to make the base more squished, we could select these 3 points and move them all at the same time. Now we have some kind of splash problem here, so I'm going to find that splash and delete it. Or let's say we wanted to make the whole thing drop down a bit. Whoa, I did not capture him. And now let's make it wider. And let's make these guys go out to join. And we could go crazy and select this one and this one. I have no idea what it's going to look like, but it's going to get wild. I think we've broken the world. So yeah, let's put that back roughly where it was. on the off chance you've been desperately wondering what point skip does, let's take this segment within this squiggle, and let's, in fact, take this one, and let's half it. So we've halved that. Now, if we wanted to undo it, obviously, we could press Ctrl-Z because we've just done it. But if that was not the case, and we wanted to get rid of it, we could select it and press skip, or press S on our keypad as a shortcut. And you can see here the symbol goes from being bent to being a continuous segment. So I'm going to press S, and that has now straightened up again. Let's label this pyramid. Now, both of these add panels just with different flags, different settings, but you can change any panel to look like any other panel. This is our first pyramid, so I'm going to call it PYR, standing for Pyramid 1. And I'm going to change the text on the font to title. Now, by the way, there's a whole bunch of stuff on text that you might want to brief up on. I'd suggest you swelp right to get the swelp video for the font and watch that. But for now, we're just going to leave it like that. I'll move this all over to the... Okay, so that actually, you see it's disappearing. That's sneakily going into this panel, so you have to be a bit careful about that. I'm going to move that there, move this where I want it, there-ish, and move that back, because, yeah. I'm now going to duplicate this whole panel. Squeeze them both on side by side. These points I'm going to move all up. Ooh, looks a bit wonky. And I'm going to put a door in the side of this. Excuse me. Hopefully that's not Corona kicking in. I'm going to put a door in the side of this. So I'm going to halve it. And I'm going to halve it again. Take this segment, halve it. Halve it. So we have the start of the door. If we don't like its position, we can select multiple points and move them all around. If we didn't like its height, we could select the top 2 points. We could try and move them around. If we didn't like its angle, wanted to look more like my construction work, then we could do that. This one, I'm going to make an arch, so I'm going to halve it. And what we could do is wed these. So we have an arch, and I'm going to just ask these sides, I don't know if you can see it, but get their gradient from that. So wherever we put these, they'll get their gradient from either side. Just for fun, I'm going to press Ctrl-Z and just hold it down and watch all that undo. And then press Ctrl-Y and watch it rebuild to see what happens. Wow, it's a whole life story of this tutorial. Holding Ctrl-Y down. And I've crashed the program. Back to work a second. See you in a minute. Slight glitch in the code there, but we're back. To be honest, this program needs more testing, but kind of desperate to get it out at the moment because I know there's a lot of bored people who this could give them a real opportunity to be creative. So slightly rushing this through in case my eyes look tired and burnt out. All is good, but you know, a lot to do. If you wanted to send your creation to a friend who also has BAM, you can click send, go to contacts. Okay, we're not currently logged in, so I'm just going to log in. I can send it to my nephew, give it a title or not. We could also, if we particularly liked t-shirts with pyramids on, print it onto something. So we click this.
Folder path saved to clipboard.
And choose what we wanted to print on. I would say right now that you may want to not do that. Depends on how Amazon are doing getting crucial orders out for people who actually need them for the coronavirus. I think pictures on t-shirts isn't crucial right now. But when this situation clears up, then you can print away your creations. And there's you can swell up on this and get the tutorial on how to print stuff, all that kind of stuff. You could also, just clicking off there, if you wanted, you could just have just one individual thing printed. You don't have to have the whole canvas. You can choose any panel and just have that printed onto something. If we want to view our messages, things people have sent to us, we can click here. This is one way of doing it. In your own time computer. And you can see the messages you've been given. Also, we can look at galleries. Now, this little blue triangle up here takes us to a whole bunch of other views. So if you right-click on it, we can see this was Canvas. This was a view we were in. We could also go to messages. We've just seen our messages, but we can go and look at them here so they have a whole dedicated view to them. Or we could go into gallery. So our galleries just let us see other people's pictures. So pretty exciting stuff. If we want to change the gallery we're looking at, you can look at your friends' galleries, your contacts' galleries. You can favorite anyone, even if they're not your friend. So you can favorite anybody and see what it is they're drawing and putting out there. Also, we have top picks, and these are public ones that have been noted because they're particularly good or nice. With all this, I'll let you play around and learn. This is slightly more advanced stuff. You might pick it up instantly, or you might need to swell up on stuff to find out how to use it all. I'm just going to look at my own one, my own gallery. Cross this off. So you can see I put the pyramid thing onto my gallery. It's from another tutorial I did. My face is once again in the way. Some people. There's my girlfriend, if I ever get one. She's got eyes and mouth and nose, all the crucial bits you'd look for in a lady. There's my dream car and my actual car. And more people dancing. To get back to the canvas view, we can right click on this like before, or we can just normal click on it and press clear. Going back to canvas. Clicking H here to hide that, so it goes all neatly away. If we wanted to start a new canvas, our canvas management, our canvas and collection management is this little orange triangle down here. So I'm going to click on this, and if I hover just to the right, we can add another canvas. Clicking that, it's currently called Canvas 1. I'm fine with that name. Clicking Add, and we can click on it to go into that canvas. Just going to add a freestyle line. We can also, going back into this, add a whole collection. Collection 1, I'm fine with that name. And we can manage our canvases from here. If, say, we wanted to look at our default collection and just see all these guys, then if we click on this, we get just all the bits from this collection. Clicking back. And also, if we wanted to edit the thumb, we can do that by clicking here. So I'm just going to click that and delete all this text. And that was a thumb for the pyramid stuff we were doing. I'm just going to draw a tiny little pyramid. I know it's super wonky, and I should probably neaten it up, but I'm not going to. See there now, our thumb for the pyramids is a pyramid. So that is a small tour of some of the features, well, a tutorial of some of the features. There's a whole heap more. There's a lot of exploring to do with this program. If you've got on with all that and you want to take your drawing to the next level, then I would suggest going to the advanced drawing tutorial. And also, where this is a fairly new project, if you want to give me feedback, you can email me to that. And also, if you find any glitches in the program, then I'd be quite keen to hear that. Most of the glitches are out, but I'm sure there's a few sneakily hidden around in there somewhere. Well, I very much hope you enjoy this, and good luck.